First of all, congratulations on this project. I really enjoyed watching it. It was a very interesting movie. It's basically a creature feature type of film, but we get introduced to this creature right away, which is not something that these movies typically do. As the writer director, why did you choose to do that?
um, well, I wrote it originally as a bit of a slow burn, where, we would get into it slowly. And I grew up in the 80s where, you were kind of allowed to do that with films, like The Exorcist takes a little time. And even Hereditary, like I was kind of influenced by films that were a slow burn because mostly my films are very wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, like never stop. But then we realized it's too much of a slow burn. And so I was like, okay, well, I mean, I'm just going to have to write a hardcore opening sequence. And so that's why I wrote, that opening sequence where, the monster very much attacks full size and it's like a classic, horror movie opening. And then it flashes back in time. So I kind of just, we wanted to start the movie with a bang. And the only way to do that was a flash forward, because when you start and the premise is that the creature starts very small, then you have to start the film very small. And sometimes a film needs to start with a bang. So that was the thinking behind that.
Definitely. And as the writer director, once again, I was taught in film school that you tell the story three times. The writer tells them from his perspective, the director tells them from his perspective, and ultimately the editor finishes it off. Being the writer
Yeah.
director, you had much of that control. So how much of
Well,
your
I'm a writer, director, editor,
oh,
so I edit too. So I co-edit my films these days. I used to edit them, but now it's just so much better to do a co-edit. So I actually write the film, and then I get to make the film again as a director, and then I get to make the film again as an editor, and then I pass it over to my co-editors, and we have another crack. So I'm a control freak um, from start to finish, really. So if the film doesn't work, then it's definitely my fault.
so how much of the original idea, went through all this process and came through?
Um, you mean how close is the film to my original idea?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Um, I think pretty close. I think pretty close. I think my original idea was that it'd be a bit more serious and probably a bit scarier. And I think my natural instinct is to make something, more fun and funny. Um, I think no matter how much I try to be a disturbing horror filmmaker, I think at the end of the day, my priorities weirdly always end up being for almost adventure first and scares second. And I think that's okay. I think it makes for a more enjoyable experience for the audience at the end of the day. But really, aesthetically, what I saw in my head 4 years ago, or whenever it was when I started writing this or thinking about it, it's pretty close. And I think that's a testament to my team, and just I absolutely got the right collaborators, and everybody worked really hard. And I really do feel like the vision that I had has, to a certain extent, been achieved quite well. So I'm pretty happy with this, and whether it does well or doesn't, it's like, oh, I tried to make a really difficult thing to make, and I kind of succeeded in here. So I mean, that's really the best thing that a filmmaker can hope for.
Definitely. With your vision, coming out the way you practically envisioned it from the beginning, how was it working with these actors that brought to life these characters that you came up with?
Well, I got to work with the best actors in my country, like Ryan Corr and Penelope Mitchell, and Robin and Noni and Sylvia. Like these are all these are all brilliant actors, like the best in Australia. So I didn't have to do much work. We were very lucky in that Elila Brown was alive and available. Just the fact that she existed probably elevated the film by a factor of maybe 30%. I mean, she's amazing. She's going to be a huge star. And Jermaine Fowler, he flew over. He's a New York guy, and so he really brought the flavor of New York over. But he's a big star, and he brought star power. But he was so humble and just such a great guy to work with, and incredibly funny. I'm trying to make another thing with him immediately. The cast was fantastic, and with a film like this, you really need to care about the characters. And actors do that. You know, you can only do so much with the writing. You need to bring people in who, you know, can bring what you've written, you know, onto the screen realistically and with charisma. And, you know, all of them, I think, have a wonderful star power. And, you know, you care about the people when they're in peril. Or you know, you miss them when they die, and that's the one thing that you want as a horror filmmaker. You know, you don't want just a smorgasbord of unlikable people being killed and nobody cares. You know, that's a bad horror film. And so, yeah, the actors are very important in that regard.
Yeah, and your story was amazing because before anything else, it's a family film. It has to do with a lot of things with the family and the stepdaughter stepfather relationship. Bringing that into it, how do you balance how much emotion you get from that section as opposed to how many jump scares, how much fright you get from, your creature?
It's hard to balance it. And like, in truth, you can never really balance it. Like, it's almost impossible to make a perfect horror film. Some people have, like Alien, The Exorcist, Jaws. These are perfect horror films, but it's very hard. And some people say maybe we spent too much time on the family, and some people think that the family element is the best thing about it. Like, it's hard to know. But in this one, it was very important for me and for all the collaborators that we really push the emotions of the people experiencing it. You know, we really wanted to try and make what people have been calling elevated horror, which really just means a well-made movie that happens to be in the horror genre. And you know, the thing that was most important for us was, you know, sure, we can set up this scary, horrible creature feature, um, you know, movie, but like the priority was to try and make the family and the world seem grounded. And so we did a lot of work on that. And yeah, I mean, finding the balance is difficult. You know, as a writer, you just, you know, you're going, okay, well, I'm 6 pages, 7 pages, eight. It's been 8 pages since a kill. Maybe we need to kill someone. You know what I mean? Or just at least put the idea of a kill, or have some kind of a jump scare. You know, I think you work it in the same way that a comedian works a set. You know, theoretically, I think, you know, what, every minute, every 45 seconds, I don't know, every comedian's different, but you're supposed to have a laugh. You know, like every now and again. And so as a writer, I'm making a horror film, so I have to have a scare every now and again. It has to be consistent and all the way through. But you know, it's a balance that is quite hard to achieve. But you certainly got to think about it the whole time. You know.
Definitely, and I think you succeeded very well with the scare factor, especially because you keep a very nice pace between the emotion and then introducing new characters, which all the buildings characters are amazing. They have their own story. They're very unique, and I think they're played very well. And then you have the creature, which as it evolves, so does the scares and the suspense. For the creature, how do you get somebody on set to fear something that's not really on set?
Um, well, I mean, a lot of it's acting and reacting. But like a lot of that on the set is, you know, created when you get somebody like Richard Taylor and the Weta Workshop to create your creature. I mean, I can talk as long as I want about this big scary creature with the mandibles and it's doing all the thing and it's going, Rah! You know, I can only do that so much. But if I just bring out a giant actual spider and shove it in Ryan Cor's face and go, this, and he's just sitting there going, oh my God. Okay, roll the cameras. And he does a real reaction because it's a real puppet in front of him. And so most of my job is done by Richard Taylor, to be honest. I don't have to do much directing. As soon as people see it, they're just like, oh my Lord, like that is horrific. Um, and, you know, that's why practical effects are good, you know, because people are actually, you know, reacting to a thing. And I think audiences are the same, you know, like you can only push things so far when you've got a digital creation, but if you've got an actual puppet moving around and snarling and you know, clawing at an actor, like audiences know what's real and what's not. So yeah, I always try to push for practical as much as I can. You know, it helps with the audiences, and it definitely helps with the reactions of the actors. You know.
Definitely. And you mentioned how Alien was an inspiration for this, and Alayla said during our interview that she talked to Sigourney Weaver about reacting to this creature. how do you feel about, her going above and beyond to capture the emotion of being in front of a creature like this?
Oh yeah, she called Sigourney Weaver. She can just dial up Sigourney Weaver and ask for advice. I was so excited. I was there for the phone call too. I was like, "Are you calling Sigourney?" And she's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I'll call her." And she called her, and I was standing in front of her. And she called her, and she's like, "Uh huh, uh huh, uh huh." She said, "Don't listen to the director." And I was like, "What? No, no, don't listen to Sigourney." So Sigourney Weaver basically said, if they tell you to be scared, don't listen to that. React how your heart is feeling as the creature comes at you. Give them a real reaction, not a faked reaction. Um, and that was her advice. That was good advice because I mean, Elila looks pretty damn scared when that thing comes at her. So yeah, it worked.
Um, and once people watch this film, what do you hope they take away? What kind of reactions are you looking for when you read reviews and see the way people are reacting to this?
Oh, well, I mean, you want people to be scared and you want them to be emotionally connected. You want them to be artistically inspired, you know, like all of the things, like I love cinema so much and I have a visceral reaction to a good movie. It makes me so happy. And that's what you want, I guess you want to make a classic. But that's kind of like throwing a very, very large spear at a very, 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 very small bullseye. Making a great movie is almost impossible. And even just making a good one is hard. So, I mean, all I really wanted was to make like a really decent horror film. Like I see Blumhouse doing a lot of good work, A24. I just wanted to make a horror film that is grounded enough to scare the crap out of people, but artistically created enough to make them aesthetically inspired. And yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. I just want to make a scary movie that people connect to.
Definitely. With all that being said, was this film made because of your fear of spiders, or where did this come from?
Yeah, I mean, I'm arachnophobic, so mostly my job is just sitting around trying to think of things that scare the crap out of me. And I just, I knew I wanted to do a single location horror film where it was a family in a single location with a single monster. Like that's very much a classic template. Um, that's Poltergeist. That's pretty much every film James Wan's ever made, every horror film he's made. It's a very, very classic. Even Hereditary follows that to a degree. Um, all the great horror films seem to follow that same template. And I was just like, what's my creature going to be? And I just couldn't think of anything scarier than a giant spider the size of a bulldog who can bite you and drag you into an air conditioning duct. Um, I couldn't think of anything scarier. And so that was, yeah, that was the impetus for making the film. My own arachnophobia, really.
Awesome. Well, I think you did a fantastic job. It is definitely scary. It's also funny. It's emotional at points. So congratulations on this well-rounded film.
Thank you so much, Jesus, and I really appreciate you taking the time and writing about it. Like without you guys, nobody knows we exist. So thank you very much.